practices with and without technology. I talk to people that are being affected by technology in their practice. And today we got Chris Fink. Chris, tell me about yourself. Where are you coming from? What you doing?
Yeah, man. Well, hey, thanks for having me on. It's great to talk. And yeah, so I'm a partner at a group of digital marketing agencies. So we're focusing on, and in Fanet, we work on specifically with home service contractors, just using all the digital marketing strategies that we possibly can to drive business to them.
And marketing's wild, right? Because 20 years ago, you put a billboard at the comment where the 5 meets the 35, and it's like, okay, well, there's 10 million eyeballs in a day, and we saw the sales go up 5%. But now you can kind of get a very deep impression of who looked at you and who they were and what they're doing. How does that kind of change your approach to planning what you do when you're seeing what makes the stuff stick?
Yeah, like you said, 20, 30 years ago, like if you were in the yellow pages or in the newspaper, then you were right in the mainstream media, right? Doing radio ads and things like that. And now, but with those, the measurements were always like, anticipated audience or your drive by for your billboard, right? And how many impressions you might get. But there wasn't even really a guarantee of those impressions. Now, with so many other, with the digital efforts, you can see a lot with a lot more clarity what's happening. You can, if you have the right tracking and the right conversion methods in place and all that, you can see what channel digitally they found you in, what message it was that they responded to, and how far into your pipeline, and did they ever turn into a customer. So it's a completely different game. But the thing that I like about it is that you can actually have math over mystery with the new age of marketing.
And and I've done a lot of product in the software space, and you kind of run into the opposite problem where you over-index on business you've won versus business you haven't won. How do you kind of like keep people interested and engaged and like, well, yes, you have 2% of the market and 80% of the people go to brand X because of reason Y. And is that a thing that you would consider doing? Like, how do you kind of bring that approach to the clients with the data?
Yeah, we usually approach that like we'll look at the audience and the intents and the conversion paths and penetration percentages of those things, and then just have a conversation with them and just, are we after general market penetration? Are we after, a competitive? Are we going after a competitor? Are we just trying to get more market share in the local area? What's shaping that strategy? And then we just kind of, we give them the data. We tell them, our insights and kind of how we can see each different play working out. But ultimately, it's a collaborative decision.
And I guess it's easier than going to library and pulling out the 2025 TAM book. I was like, oh, there's 50 plumbers in this area, so we're going to be 51,
Oh, got it.
But, I find that information, I was a kid who read the encyclopedia for fun, and I think like the problem we have now that a lot of people who aren't me run into, and this is a curse. I'm not patting myself on the back, is like how do you maintain who you are in a sea of data? Right? Like you could be drowned. You could read an entire book about baseball stats, and then everything in the world looks like a baseball corollary. And then you start talking about double plays and stuff, and then you're like completely lost the thread. How do you and AI, I think, makes it worse, right? Because now you're doing all these things that you're only maybe seeing 8% of it or 0% of it. And so how do you keep the data from overwhelming common sense?
It's so hard. I'll tell you what, I've struggled with recently. So in the beginning with the LLMs coming out like ChatGPT, right? And you type in a query and you get this 9 paragraphs of bullet points answer, right? And you're like, oh, this is so cool. It's so much information. And now I type it in and it's 9 paragraphs of bullet points that, and like this constant scrolling of like, not really qualitative summary data. It's not what I'm looking for at those things. So I found that the formatting a lot now, and it's giving so much that it's taking me as long to just read through all the stuff it's generating than it would for me to just kind of do a little bit of research sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's tough to sort through that. But I think what I've gotten good at is just having secondary and third line, prompts like, okay, let's sum this up and let's just drill into this one point. And, once I'm better at kind of shaping that output, that helps me keep focus and not go into this huge, long ocean of content that I'm trying to figure out sometimes it's just as bad as, not knowing and knowing that I have to read a book to get the answer.
Yeah. Well, and I think like it never hurts in business to be skeptical, right? Like it never hurts to like get multiple sources and to like say, well, Moody's says this, and Adbuster says this, and somewhere in the middle is probably a grain of truth. And I think like the lost opportunity maybe in AI is that if AI becomes the surface, then you have to diversify your sources because you don't know where the AI sources are from, right? You don't understand where it's doing. And I think a lot of tooling, especially entrepreneurs like you, they are the grounding that is required to, like, you can't just have ChatGPT write emails to your clients. It can like write a first draft, but you need to eyeball it and do it. And because otherwise it's going to miss stuff that only through your 20 years in your profession.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting because with each model, like all the different models out there have their own skill sets, right? And as far as the LLMs and the AIs and all that. And even just between OpenAI and Anthropic's models. And some of the value that some of the third-party harness tools, like an OpenClaw situation, can tap into different models for different things. So you can kind of customize a little bit better, I think. But even so, like now you don't know how each one of them is optimized for the content, where it's sourcing from. And that it'll tell you to go, you can go into Claude Code, you can build something out and it'll say, hey, you need to go to Supabase for this. You need to go to Supabase. You need to go to Supabase. Well, maybe I need Firebase because I'm running everything in GCS. But that's what it's geared to do. And I don't know those answers. So sometimes, like you said, skepticism is good, and just saying like, I don't agree, go deeper.
Yeah. Well, and we're kind of finding at Toledo that off-the-shelf AI like Claude Code is like buying clothes at Walmart, where like if you need an outfit to go to the beach, it's fine, and if you need a tailor suit, you're going to need a little help, and you're probably going to have to alter it and do a lot of work on it.
Right.
Do you do a lot of in-house like tweaking and modeling, or are you kind of just like, we have our processes and we use AI sparingly, but our processes are kind of staying relatively the same in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I would say for the last couple of years, it had been more of the latter. But now we're doing a lot more refinement and building new systems and experimenting with different models at different points, and combining the AIs and the automations. Right. Every time you turn around, it's like, oh, I built this with AI. No, you didn't. You put together an automation. It's not the same. But sometimes there's a combination effort with them. And when you can get them working well, now we're at a place where we're tuning up our systems and we're refining and like swapping things out and trying different things, and actually looking at like, okay, well, when I use this model in stage 2 of pipeline 3, then this is what I'm getting. So we are doing a lot more experimentation and tweaking now than we have in the past.
Yeah. And, I also find a lot of like, especially in analog organizations, is that there's a lot of load-bearing people that are like giving gas station directions all day. That's not part of their job, but like they know who to call and they know what to do. And there's a lot of opportunities there to automate the pain of that, and get them back to their real role and responsibility, and how to disseminate the information is like, to me, is like the really money left on the table opportunity from all these tech companies is, where's my knowledge graph for my company? Where how do I keep my substrate independent of the model? Because models will come and go, but like my business mind is something that is my competitive advantage.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been on my mind lately a lot is, well, just like you said, models will come and go, right? So if you're going to build a system around a certain model set, I think you have to be cognizant of building in quick shift capability so that you can go from one model to the other, because we're going back and forth, right? I don't know that we have a clear winner like right now. Like if you had asked last year, it would have been OpenAI is the clear winner. And right now it's probably more general sense of Anthropic. But it's not done. Like we've got a little bit longer before we figure out the next Google.
Yeah.
And of AI. So building systems that can have model pivots and shift, because there's so much surface and so much more that's going to come up.
you know, and I'm waiting for people to rediscover like dumb chatbots, because like you take a dumb chatbot and you put it in front of ChatGPT, and you're like, oh my gosh, it works now. Like, and instead of like all the brittle failure paths, it goes in ChatGPT, except you're using 1/100th of the cost because it's not hitting ChatGPT. So it's like, oh, okay, now that compute is being priced accurately and it's no longer VC subsidized, are we going to go back to like regex front ends and orchestrators that are just like a computer program? That's what computer programs are. When we say analog to digital, we're reducing fidelity of something into something smaller that's actionable, right? So
yeah. I had a question for you. I was thinking about this. It's a theory of mine that as we're building all these systems, all these different tools are coming out, right? And different versions of tools, right? You got basically Anthropic and OpenAI. Now you got Perplexity and all the different things that are basically aggregators, or shells wrapping around it. Cool. You start building systems using all these tools. And my theory is that we're going to completely reinvent our production capabilities. We're going to downsize our HR and reduce our need for humans, or have, maybe improve efficiencies, but we're going to reduce the number of people. And as all that happens, we're going to see these tools, then the token expense is going to climb up to where we're going to be in 5 years. We're going to go, holy smokes, man, I just wish I had a person back. I was getting it done faster and better by a person and cheaper.
Well, and I think, kind of talked about like when you said someone made something with a prompt and they didn't. They kind of did, right? Because they made a map to the answer.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people that in an organization that are very good at finding the maps to answers. And it's very hard to build a tooling process that makes that something that's a viable, repeatable, unattended thing. And I think the desire to save all the money is kind of reducing all the cool opportunities to save a little bit of money. And if there's like a button that's like boot to server, just put it on your desk. And then if one day there's a 0 day, a person has to come in and figure out what the implication of 0 day is and maybe moderate a plan and all that. And how do we kind of like, there's a range of decisioning around that. And I think you're absolutely right. Like a lot of agents, and I think agents is a crazy way of saying functions, right. And like, just because you have an org chart, I kind of think like there's a lot of technologists and companies who see this, that it's really silly to make the computers being an org chart when it's just CRUD. And so if everything is boiled down to CRUD, and then you just like, okay, there's 5 people who the buck stops here. And so we're going to automate everything up to their desk. And then when it can't figure it out, those person will click yes or no. And that is kind of scary for a lot of organizations. So they kind of build in like, okay, here's Microsoft Office and Word with a prompt, and it's different than the prompt in Excel because, we're the Word team. We know how to make Word documents, but like it's just structured data. What's the difference between JSON and an Excel and whatever? It's just like ones and zeros. So, and the funny thing is, if you throw all that away, if you started a company from scratch today in a model, it kind of works a lot better, because you're just like, the prompt window is so small. It's just like, I want to make a pizza. Great. Turn on the oven, throw in a pizza.
Right. Yeah. You said something there too that made me think when you talked about the org chart, right? And businesses now like, oh yeah, here's my org chart, and it's all these agents or functions, right? I wonder, are they also creating the accountability chart with that? Because they're not the same thing. And what do you have happen when you have a failure in your accountability chart? When you have agents running there, you just, okay, well, I guess I have to spend my weekend now going back and figuring out where the prompting's wrong.
Yeah. Well, and it's like the IBM slide, right? That computers don't get in trouble, so they should make decisions. And if your agent is making decisions and you can't unfuck the duck, like, you know what I mean? Like, then the computer shouldn't do it, right? Because then it's just a coin flip whether or not you stumble into liability or actionability against you and all that. So like, I think that's also a big thing where I've talked to clients and they're like, hey, we want to do this. I'm like, well, I wouldn't. And here's what you can get away with and do it. And then like, great conversation. They go do it. And then 3 months later, I see them in front of like Congress explaining why they violated the labor code and all that stuff. Because we're really in our FAFO moment of like, like, hey, listen, I talked to Claude and he said you fears are overblown, and also said I'm handsome and smart. And I think I think we're going to go a different way with this.
Yeah.
And I think that's also the other problem is like no one in society is talking to a raw model except for technologists. They're talking to the consumer model that is designed to trick you into a SaaS relationship. And so everyone's evaluation of the last 3 years is very suspect of how good the tooling is. So
that's go deeper on that, because that's such a great point. And I think it's not out there in conversation enough.
Yeah, it's just like a pet rock isn't a pet. Like just because you anthropomorphize the prompt, it doesn't really tell you anything about how many times I'm going to the prompt. And like we took a week off from client work last summer, and we did nothing but prompting all week. So unbounded Claude code usage, and it made 3,000 computer programs. Wow. And the 3,000 computer programs, most of them are Python files. It was like 11 computer programs done over and over and over again. And so we kind of realized that like, oh, it's like using terry cloth for toilet paper. Like it's like this, it's like a 900 number of like information where if I make a script and that script is useful enough to require it again, why isn't that part of my tool set? And why does it have to go to AI every time to make it bespoke? I think that's kind of like the everyone's bills is about to go up 1,000% as they start pricing this fairly. They're like, oh, wait a minute. I had 9 months of Python programs. I could have just built, if then or that clone, and I would have had most of the stuff in my stack AI free.
Yep. Yeah. Same things. And that's kind of where I'm seeing all this going. Like the usage is going up, the tokens are going up. Now they're building the data centers. Of course, they have to pay for the data center, so they're going to, charge more for the tokens, and it's going to just continue to scale and ramp up. And what is it that we're really getting out of that we can't get now? I'm sure there'll be changes and improvements. There's going to be things with it, but if, to your point also, like they're engineered to create a SaaS relationship. And if we think that they're not, well, we also think that Facebook was here just so we could connect with our friends. Like, there has to come a time where we understand that there are devious minds afoot and, and there's a plan, and it's not usually the plan that you think you see.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing I was wrong about was like, when Salesforce made the pivot to AI, I was like, great, because every Salesforce problem is like no one knows how to set it up. And if you could just like talk through your org chart to Salesforce and it could self-configure itself, Salesforce is going to be massively successful and popular. And then I forgot the organization of Salesforce was owned and run by Salesforce. Like they have a whole ecosystem, ISVs and all that stuff that are like dependent on the fact that every installation is a snowflake and requires special care and feeding, and no one's incentivized to just like, hey, person, I don't work for Salesforce, I work for you. Let's fire 80% of your stack. And when you get an email, click it and it goes into Jira and makes a message in Slack. And that's what you use Salesforce for.
Yeah. Salesforce is, again, great tools, and really, they have a lot of things right.
Yeah.
They have a lot of things right, but these models, they make it so difficult to extricate yourself from them. Mm-hmm. That it, then now you have that constraint and you feel that pain of change if you ever want to consider one. And the pain of change sometimes is like, okay, well, how much am I willing to lose to go to the new shiny object?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, the enterprise takes 18 months to do anything, right? So it's, the people who work for the companies who make these products didn't have access to ChatGPT and stuff for like the first year and a half, 2 years of the product, because it took that long to get through security. And so all the demos were these like naive demos of and I think they really are surface pros, these agents, because you can yes, I can make any demo in 20 minutes and get up to 69% quality. And then it's, how do I get to 9 nines of quality? It's impossible, I think, with like general models without knowing deep intimacy of a product.
Right. What are your thoughts on like the localized agents and agentic, just basic, direction there?
I think we are seeing that local agents are now good. If you buy any computer that is Apple Intelligence or Copilot enabled and get like Quen or like DeepSeek and models and run it locally, 72% of AI usage can be contained to the desktop.
Yeah.
And so, and that is just like, where's that file? Respond to that email, plan a meeting. And so and I think this is directly why you see the big guys getting to orchestration. Like Microsoft Phi is an orchestrator. And they're going to have models like, okay, the research model, like you said, is like, okay, deep research is going to cost 5 cents a second. And, the email model maybe is free. And I think all of that is like incredibly confusing for consumers, and it's going to kill the industry versus like, hey, when you pay $30 a seat for Microsoft, is this what you get? And you do your business and you'll get everything you need versus like having to think about, oh man, if I research this properly, it's going to blow the budget. Like I think that is like a huge step in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And conversely, like I think in the mad dash to make things that are like demoable enough, we're losing a lot of institutional knowledge in a hurry.
Yeah. And
so like, especially like people that are late stage career that are slower in the uptake to looking AI first. And so there's going to be a collapse, I think, of the prompt, because if the prompt is built by your org knowledge chart and Billy, the super smart guy who invented Java 35 years ago, isn't in the Teams team typing messages every day about insights into new technology, you're going to have a collapse. And because we don't know how to measure any of that, we are doing all kinds of dumb things as a nation of like killing our brain trust and stuff like that. And so who's going to train the engineers coming up and all that is a huge question and problem, I think, too.
It is. And I think there was, I watched this funny little meme or real thing recently where it was a scene from a movie. I think Elizabeth Hurley, and she's playing a nurse and she's putting candy in medicine cups at a old person's home, right? And the guy's like, "What are you doing? You can't give him that." And she goes, "Oh, it'll be fine." And then the byline was like, the next generation of nurses who have gotten their diplomas off of ChatGPT. And I thought, like that's funny. But what are the guardrails to actually see that that's not the case? And that's just one particular niche. So any intellectual endeavor that you can pass with these tests, like if you go out into the field, right, you get an electrician, you write a ChatGPT article that you understand ohmage, and then you go out there and you touch the black wire and the blue wire time, you might have some problems. So when you talk about institutional knowledge and just real world experience, hands-on things versus anecdotally absorbing them through research done in a platform, how do you foresee that impacting like the output of our education system?
Well, I did have a moment in the mall like a week or two ago where I saw a bunch of teens roasting a teen, and they were calling him Claude. And it was because he had like some idea that was just so like basic. And it's just like, oh, right, Claude. And it was just like, so I think the kids are okay. I think I'm more worried about the boomers. I'm more worried about the millennials, and I'm more worried about, Gen Xers and stuff who are like, you see the things like people saying, oh, I don't have an inner voice, or people who are like, oh, I don't believe in organized religion, but Claude is a god, and it's just like, I think the kids have common sense and they'll find a way to get through it. And the problem is, what will they inherit and how much they'll have to build themselves. And I think like I have a lot of nieces and nephews who are graduating high school, and they're like, where am I going to find work? I went to school for graphic design and there's no work. It's like, well, you have no kids, you have no hope, you have no possibility. So work on that comic book. Just you don't have to go into Fortune 5 out of college, and and I think these people are going to make their own Fortune 5s because I think all these companies are cooked who don't see that, like, oh, it's no longer quarter to quarter, it's 5-year plan, 10-year plan, and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that this, I mean, we are in the next Wild West. It's like being in the 90s all over,
mhm.
with the advent. I mean, I had green screens and was writing and coding on an Apple IIc. I mean, but
Yeah.
I dated myself there a little bit, you know, but now seeing what's happening now, it kind of feels like that all over. It's just things are coming out so fast at such volume. And that's the other thing is just like, how do you make a decision and land on a solution path that you can have confidence is going to be here in 12 months without having to go reinvent the entire thing all over?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's kind of like, I call those like bridge Xers, where, like, when I went into high school, I wanted to be work in a recording studio, and so I went to freshman year of college and I cut tape,
Yeah.
and they got Pro Tools the year after I graduated, and it's just like, okay, so that was useless, but no, it wasn't useless because the job isn't being a tape operator; it's learning to use your ears and doing things and learning how to make work. And when I interview people, I don't say, what did you ship? I say, what did you prevent? What lessons did you learn? Because I think that whole executive function is now the most sought after commodity in the United States, because there's like people who know common sense, and there are people that are just like, you just read a prompt back to me verbatim with no sense of self-awareness, irony, or whatever, and you don't really understand what you said. And I think that's more important than if whether or not they use AI. Is like, emails are performative. And so, like, if the email has all the information and it's correct and cogent, I don't care how you produced it, as long as you understand it and you stand by it, and
Right.
if it goes south, you will fix it and
Right.
or be accountable for it.
Yeah. That you own it. Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of like, and kind of in like an era of no accountability in many different levels, both socially and politically and culturally. And I think the young people, I feel like, are very accountable. Like, they're very good at self-advocacy and enforcing social conventions like pronouns, and standing up for justice. And hopefully we'll just kind of get through this moment as a group, because it's like technology always takes second seat to what we do. And in 5 years, like, it'll just be like Microsoft Clippy will be the joke again,
Right.
and because it's like, at the end of the day, like, people are people and people will do things. So
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is people continuing to be people. And I do feel like there's such an opportunity now to engage at these levels, and human interaction is diminishing. I've seen it even in the kids that have been in my life. Like, they don't want to call for a haircut. If they can't text, they don't want to set the appointment. Right? They don't want to talk. They want to text, and they're great talking smack, on an Xbox, but in person, they don't know how to talk to other people. So some of those interpersonal skills are being diminished. That said, there are some opportunities with some of the personality variants that are happening in some of these models that are actually getting conversations going, and, like, resurfacing that kind of how to have a conversation. And I like that part of it, but I'll be interested to see what's on the other side, and knowing that reading a person and being street smart is very different than being informed.
mhm. Well, and my grandma said that being street smart is just a matter of always saying no, right? Like, as long as you say no all the time, you're not going to get ripped off. But also, like, you don't really live life. So I think there's a lot of people who are like, they never touch grass, and there's no third spaces to go to,
Yeah.
and then they go out in the world and they ask them to doge the government and make decisions based on things. And I think that knowing that, like, oh yeah, people are people and people need to have consideration, is such a crucial skill, especially if you're in a space that arbitrates computers and technology. We had a guest right before you came on last week that they help not-for-profits who get money from the state of California, because they're like drug shelters and homeless shelters and community orgs, and they getting money from the state is like winning the lottery, right?
Okay.
And and because you win the lottery, you need to have the acumen of someone who went to Wharton or some kind of like business school kind of capability, and you're very emotionally invested in your organization. So it's very hard not to do the right thing that's illegal, the moral thing that is like, oh, we didn't do our taxes right, and now we're all getting audited, and we're not going to get our money next year, and all that stuff. And so I think like that is kind of like the scary gap of expertise is like where are all the Minutemen to make sure that we're not like making things we can't undo.
Right.
When you're talking to clients about marketing, like,
yeah,
do you get a lot of like one interesting thing about, I think, ChatGPT is some people have ideas and maybe they're dumb for them to say it, but at least they like took it through a process and they're able to bring an artifact to you, and it may be awful, but like you understand where they're coming from better. Sure. Have you ever like seen something that is kind of like, okay, it's cute that you did that, Greg, but I see what you're trying to do, and here's what I would do, and it was a good idea. Can you think of things like that recently that you run into? Or
yeah, it'll happen often, and it's probably going to happen more and more as people get greater exposure to these tools, and they'll bring things up. I think our normal way is we'll try to take a look at it because it might be right, it might be good information, and if it is, then we accept that and be like, that was great output. And usually I try to get some conversation about, tell me about the prompt and the conversation that you were having, the text string that led you here to this place, because there's value in understanding how that all came together, just how you're thinking and how you're asking these questions. Sometimes it comes back and it's just wrong, and that's okay. So usually, when we have that, we'll just like, well, let's go through it. Okay, well, the intent was right. What you were trying to accomplish was good, and you're asking good questions, but there's some change, there's some variances in like how to ask those questions, and there's a lot of different ways to interpret this data. So let's walk through current best practice and let me show you some some facts about what we're seeing out here in the world now that are sustainable through data, and then we can make some good decisions together, and we can take the pieces of this that work and discard the rest. Is that fair? And usually when I have the conversation like that, it's not about, because I don't want to dismiss the results out of hand. They might be really good. I've seen really good results come out, but I don't trust them without verifying it. Yeah. So we just have that same conversation with them and just like, yep. I had a guy I was talking to the other day. He's buying another business, and he's like, yeah, I was in Claude and we were talking about the models and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, great. Like, let's talk through it. Okay. Some of these things look really good. I would push back on a few of them, but I have, actual world experience as opposed to theory and math calculations that Claude is using to come to these conclusions. So let's walk through the parts, keep what we like, discard the rest. Just like anything else, when I go to a conference, I do the same thing, right? Keep what I like, take home, try to implement 3 things that I like, and discard the rest.
Yeah. Well, when I talk to my clients of a certain age, I tell them, go watch an episode of Columbo.
Yeah,
that's how you should be talking to your agents, where it's just like you don't want to say where you were on the night of the 4th. You just talk about anything and they'll tell you what they were doing on the night of the 4th.
Right.
And I think that is kind of like, if it's almost like a poker tell, that if the thing figures out you want an outcome, it will give you what you wish. And if you're just like, why would you say that, half the time it'll be like, oh, sorry, I just made that up.
Right. Well, because they're designed to give an answer, even if they don't know the answer. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're all the same. Like, in that route, they're designed to give an answer. And they are getting better at creating some boundaries on, like, I can't answer this because it's a legal matter. I can't answer this, but still, outside of those exceptions, it's still going to try to give an answer. So I think, to your point, like, oh, well, why do you think that is? And, go further and, like, just not give it an obvious, clear direction. Give me a solution to this problem, because then it will try.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, like, at the end of the day, hallucinations is a governance problem. It's not a technology issue to be solved, because there's many things in life that are true that are wrong. Yeah. Like if you are allergic to peanuts, peanut pad thai could be a thing for dinner that's completely, utterly wrong for you. And I think, like, unless and the alternative is like, I'm not going to give Anthropic the entire access to my brain. Like, I'm not going to give a tech company complete unfettered access to my life and my technology, even though a lot of them are pretty close, so how do we, I think, going back to what we were saying, I think on-device metals is the only way this works, because there has to be some sort of governor that says, okay, Chris goes bowling on Tuesdays and he hates shrimp and all the things that are in life. And when you say something silly like, I need to write an email, it'll write mostly the perfect email you need first time, because it knows that you hate M dashes and you don't do comma splices and all that stuff in the world, right? And I think if you build a very customized system, you start seeing things work the way you want. We actually have a question in chat. Let me see what we got. Here we go. Oh, just saying hello. Hey, Kokomo. All right, so Chris, we've talked a long time. Where can people find more about you and your company? And who are you looking to talk to?
Yeah, well, we specifically we talk to home service contractors, so roofers, plumbers, HVAC, any service, local business that's working with homes. There are people. That's where we like to live, and driving leads, marketing for them. You can find us we're at fanit.com. I'm on there. I'm also on LinkedIn at just Christopher.Fink1. And also, Facebook. I'm in all the usual places. I'm one of the usual suspects. But fanit.com, and just go to our team and you'll find me right there.
Great. And Chris, thanks for coming on. And we'll put a link to your thing in the chat, and catch us next time.
Sounds great. Thanks, Peter.